My name is Professor Robbie Payton. I'm Director of Development at the University of Glasgow, Adam Smith Business School. Welcome to our MBA Essentials course. The school is triple accredited and we've been teaching the MBA since 1976. Our Coursera MBA Essentials course is designed to give you a taste for business. You'll learn about supply chain management, business models, project management, digital innovation and marketing. If you've been thinking about an MBA, this course will give you a good starting point to become more familiar with what you're likely to study. If you have studied for an MBA and you're looking for a taster, this course will bring you up to speed very quickly and point you in the right direction for future studies. In this course, you'll meet inspiring lecturers teaching their current MBA subjects, each of them bringing exciting and challenging insights into their research and their areas of expertise. We hope you'll see that the MBA is a diverse and practical subject to study and one which will be impactful for you and your employers in the future. Okay, so let's get started. My colleague, Dr. Javier Llanes Arenas, the MBA Director, will lead you through the course. I wish you well and hope your studies will be rewarding and your career will blossom with the Glasgow MBA.
Hello, I'm Dr. Javier Llanes Arenas, and I'll be guiding you throughout these few weeks on MBA Essentials. You're about to start week 1, and we hope you're excited to officially get started. This week, you'll be looking at 3 big topics: business models, supply chain management, and the global economy. In the first module, you'll meet Professor Stefan von Delft, who will introduce you to business models. You will learn what a business model is, what the differences between pipeline and platform business models are, and how to design business models. In the second module, I will guide you through the topic of supply chain management, shed light on the nuances of supply chain management and logistics, introduce the flows to be managed, and present a strategic approach to classify suppliers. The last module of week 1 is the global economy. Senior lecturer Dr. Soner Baskaya will discuss how the global economy works, trade in technology and capital, financial assets and financial globalization, and benefits and challenges going forward.
Welcome to the first session on business models. My name is Stefan von Delft. I am a professor of strategic management at the University of Glasgow, Adam Smith Business School. In this video, you will learn why business models matter and what a business model is. We often associate successful companies with their products, such as Apple and its iPhone. But the secret behind the success of many of the world's most renowned companies is more than a good product. Successful companies take a good product and wrap it in a great business model. An example is Nestle with its Nespresso business model. No surprise then that the design of business models has become a hot topic in management thinking these days. The term business model is now ubiquitous in business news and consulting. It is associated with opportunities to capitalize on new technologies and to disrupt existing markets, but also with the need to respond to shifts in competition and the strategic renewal of incumbent firms. Indeed, business model life cycles are drastically shorter than they used to be. This explains why business model change is high on the agenda of executives. For example, a recent survey by PwC suggests that UK businesses set for radical change as almost a quarter admit that their business model may not be viable in a decade. But what actually is a business model? A business model is a conceptual model of a business. It describes the system of activities through which a company creates, delivers, and captures value. Value creation includes activities to solve a customer problem or satisfy a customer need. Value delivery includes activities to, for example, raise awareness among customers about a firm's offerings and to ship and install the offering. Value capture includes activities to, for example, collect subscription fees or payments from the sale of a product. Take a biotech company as an example. The company may create value by identifying promising molecular compounds and testing their safety and efficacy in a fast and affordable way. It may capture value by licensing the property rights on the compounds to large pharmaceutical companies. Value delivery not only requires the biotech company to attract pharma companies through effective marketing, but also to ensure customer satisfaction through excellent customer support. However, a business model is not simply a list of activities to create, deliver, and capture value. The key is the system or architecture of how the value creation, delivery, and capture mechanisms are linked. An important aspect in understanding the success and failure of business models is thus mapping the relationship between the value creation, delivery, and capture functions and the underlying activities. Welcome to the third session on business models. In this video, you will learn about basic types of business models. There are basically two types of business models: pipeline and platform business models. Pipeline businesses operate in linear value chains. That means they manage sequential activities to create value. Key activities in a pipeline business model are governed by the company, and it typically owns most assets within their domain of activity. An example for a company operating a pipeline business model is the tool manufacturer Steel. The company develops and manufactures tools and then sells these tools to customers. It thus converts inputs to outputs in a linear series of activities. Platform business models work differently. The source of value in platform business models are information and interactions. Platforms are hence a form of marketplace. The platform owner leverages resources and competencies from partners in the platform ecosystem. Value is therefore co-created within a network of relationships. Examples for companies operating platform business models are Amazon, Spotify, and Tinder. Many companies in the digital economy operate platform business models, but platform business models are not new. For example, a shopping mall is a form of platform that connects merchants with consumers. What is of course different in the digital age is the speed and low costs by which information is exchanged and the fact that physical assets matter less than before. Let us now take a closer look at these two business model types, starting with pipeline business models. Some pipeline business models focus on standardized products and/or services. Consider the example of the fast food chain McDonald's. The business model of McDonald's is a typical pipeline business model, where a standardized product is sold to customers. An advantage of this business model is its good scalability, typically resulting from economies of scale. That is, an increased level of production leads to lower costs per unit. Instead of selling standardized products or services, a company can also use a pipeline business model to offer tailored solutions. In this form of pipeline business, the company will need to interact closely with the customer prior to creating the solution to determine what exactly it is the customer needs. Examples are specialty chemical companies and hairdressers. Pipeline businesses offering customized products or services are usually more difficult to scale, but come with high profitability per customer. In reality, pipeline businesses do not offer either standardized or customized products and services. In other words, pipeline business models have different degrees of product service standardization and customization respectively. Think of it as a spectrum. Now let's have a look at platform business models. Consider the example of an online group buying business model. This platform business model was pioneered in 2009 in the United States by the e-commerce marketplace Groupon. It enables interactions between consumers and local merchants, such as restaurants. The OGB business model creates value by connecting local commerce, increasing consumer buying power, and local merchant sales through price and discovery. For example, merchants can benefit from transacting on an OGB platform by reaching new customers and selling slow-moving items in their inventory or unutilized services. On one side of the OGB business model, the focal platform firm performs activities such as attracting local merchants, negotiating discounts, and crafting offerings into so-called deals. On the other side of the business model, the deals are offered to consumers. In the OGB business model, the platform provides transactional infrastructure, sets rules and standards, and controls activities to attract users and matches users on both sides. Other activities in the business model are not performed by the platform, but by consumers and merchants. For example, consumers print transaction codes at home and use deals in local stores that supply the product or service offered on the platform. Many of the activities critical to the business model are hence not controlled by the platform, but by external parties. This is typical for platform business models. The basic value creation logic behind platform business models may seem simple, but many platform business models and the activity system around which they are built are quite complex. Welcome to the final session on business models. In this video, you will learn about strategies to design digital business models. In the digital economy, the business model is key to survive. Many digital business models are platforms, such as the language e-learning company Preply. But digital business models can also be based on selling digital products, such as in the case of game developers like Epic Games and Glue. We can define a digital business model as the architecture of the value creation, delivery, and capture mechanisms of a firm embodied in or enabled by digital technologies. As such, a firm's digital business model is a reflection of its realized digital strategy. A digital strategy is about creating customer value and competitive advantage in a constantly evolving digital world. That definition implies that the firm has made a choice about where to play and how to win in a digital ecosystem involving a distinctive set of activities that span the firm's boundaries. The resulting system of interdependent activities the firm implemented to leverage the capabilities of digital technologies is a reflection of its digital strategy, but it is not the strategy, it is the digital business model. A firm's digital strategy therefore serves two purposes. One is to answer what digital business model to choose. The other is how to develop that business model. In this short video, I will focus on the second purpose and thus explore the question of how digital business models come into being and how they develop over time. This topic is important for new ventures that create their first digital business model, as well as for established firms that undergo digital transformation. The two principal ways to design digital business models are business model innovation and business model imitation. Both innovation and imitation are viable ways to form business models in the digital economy, and they are not mutually exclusive. Rather, they may be conceived of as two ends of a continuum along which real-world strategies to design digital business models lie. There are many strategies along this spectrum, but today we only focus on two: pioneer strategy and copycat strategy. In a pioneer strategy, the company leads in the introduction of new digital business models that create entirely new markets or create and exploit new opportunities in existing markets. Pioneers are frequently considered trendsetters, and, over time, their digital business model may become the default solution in their domain of activity. An example is Netflix's streaming model. The principle behind the pioneer strategy is opportunity creation. The innovator drives the creation of new value propositions in concert with partners and positions itself in such a way that it captures an often significant share of profits. A prerequisite for this strategy is not only a strong innovation orientation, but also capabilities to develop customers and to build and shape the ecosystem. At the other end of the spectrum, we find a strategy focused on imitation. It is called copycat strategy. Digital firms following this strategy develop their business models predominantly through imitation. The clearest case of this occurs when an entrant to a market clones or copies most of a rival's business model innovation. Copycat strategies are often seen as simple, a strategy only pursued by inferior firms. However, copycat strategies can, and often do, result in the creation of a viable and very profitable business model. For a copycat strategy to work, the company must have a strong competitor orientation. After all, it must effectively respond to rivals' innovations. This requires superior monitoring and execution skills and an efficient, meaning fast, business model imitation process. Copycats also require skills to quickly scale the business model. The aim is hence to outgrow the innovator. With this short introduction to design strategies, we conclude the course on business models. Take a moment of your time to reflect. What have you learned in this course? What topics would you like to explore in more detail now that you have had a brief introduction to business model design? Leave your comments down below.
Hello, and welcome to a short taster of topics on global businesses and supply chains. I am Dr. Javier Llanes, MBA Director at the Adam Smith Business School and Senior Lecturer in Supply Chain Management. Supply chain management as a discipline has increased its strategic relevance in the last 40 years, especially because in the last 2 decades of the 20th century, the globalization process became prevalent. However, more recently, end consumers like you or me have suffered the inconveniences caused by disruptions in supply chains. Those disruptions are generated by natural events or disasters, hurricanes, storms, volcano eruptions, earthquakes, floodings, or tsunamis, by the COVID pandemic, or by so-called accidents. For example, the Suez Canal was blocked to all traffic for 6 days because a large container ship named the Ever Given got stuck across the canal. Unpredictable and uncertain events as the ones mentioned show the complexity and interdependence of global supply chains. The Global Supply Chain Pressure Index shows to some extent how uncertain is the behavior of the chains. Therefore, it is critical for businesses, organizations, governments, and people to understand and use management tools to ease disruptions that might not be preventable. In our next video, I will introduce the differences between 2 related concepts: supply chain management versus logistics. See you then, after you have read the article that links globalization, deglobalization, and supply chains. Welcome again. A good MBA program is an opportunity to go back to basics and to develop a critical approach towards management issues. On the topic we are addressing, global businesses and supply chains, you might be among the people who get confused when the issues addressed are related to logistics or to supply chain management. Therefore, let's bring some light to enhance your understanding. For most scholars, the ancient concept of logistics was popularized by military officer and writer Antoine-Henri Jomini during the Napoleonic Wars, indicating that logistics in that context deals with moving what is needed for the troops to be ready at a specific place and time. At that time, early 19th century, an army of 100,000 men required over 80 tons of food per day, and 50,000 horses needed about 4 square kilometers per day or 1,000 acres of grass. The dictionary definition gives details on what it is included in logistics, and it shows how the use of the term has increased since World War I, even more after World War II. On the other hand, the use of the term supply chain is newer. It started in 1980 and has permeated the management discipline. Both McKinsey and Sips indicates how the term implies a series of steps or activities to reach consumers with goods or services. Let's focus on supply chain management by looking at some definitions. Stock and Lambert look at it as a business process or a set of business processes in which it is critical to manage the different flows. On the other hand, the Supply Chain Operations Reference Model, SCORE, developed by APIX, is focused on 6 processes: plan, make, source, deliver, return, and enable. However, younger academics and practitioners emphasize the collaborative nature of integrating efforts across the chain, including service providers, in order to improve the customer experience. Still today, practitioners and scholars may take one of 4 perspectives supported on evidence gathered by Larson and Haldorson back at the beginning of the century. For many with a traditional perspective, supply chain management is a subset of logistics. For others, it has been just a rebranding or relabeling. It is the same with a different name. For many others, they are 2 different camps that may complement each other, and therefore there is an area in which they intersect. And for even more, perhaps, it is the current dominant perspective. Supply chain management brings under its umbrella other camps, including logistics. Each perspective might lead into a different organizational structure on how the activities and processes involved are managed within the chain and within each organization. With that said, it could be fair to establish that logistics is mostly in charge of coordinating the movement of materials, parts, people, and facilities. That includes sourcing and delivering, while supply chain management looks after business processes, flows within them, and collaborative interactions among internal and external partners in the chain. The current aim of both is to enhance customer satisfaction while aligning operations with their sustainability goals. See you in our next video, in which we will explore what flows through supply chains. Hello, supply chain explorers. In the previous video, we indicated that different flows take place within a supply chain. Therefore, let's use a river as an illustration to better understand what is flowing through a supply chain and to clarify 2 essential concepts. When navigating a river, 2 expressions may be used. First, upstream, meaning going in the direction towards where the stream was born, against its natural flow. And second, downstream, meaning exactly the opposite, going towards the lake or ocean where the stream will die. In the case of the supply chain, downstream represents activities or interactions towards the end consumer, while upstream represents activities or interactions with suppliers. Corey Nelson from the University of Minnesota uses a simplified supply chain for jeans as an example to describe a supply chain from raw materials, cotton growers, to the final good being sold to an end consumer. Remember the SCORE model introduced in the previous video. Plan, make, source, deliver, return, and enable are processes repeated in every stage of the chain. Let's start with the flow of goods, where multiple companies, like the samples showed, are included. The cotton grower may farm cotton for surgical purposes or for clothing, as in this example, or else. The cotton grower may buy materials required like seeds, mechanized cotton pickers, and herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers for multiple suppliers. Also, it may hire trucks to deliver raw materials to spinning facilities for threads production. However, spinning facilities may have several cotton suppliers, even from different countries. Then you can anticipate the level of complexity after looking at the first linkage in the chain. Studying a supply chain allows to better understand an industry in its global dimension. Are you aware that China and India were the largest producers of cotton, representing about 45% of the cotton world market? Again, this is a simplification of products and services flowing downstream from conception and design to the final jeans at a retailer store in London. On the other hand, the flow of information goes in both directions, upstream and downstream. Information enables the chain. Lack of accurate and timely information is a challenge. Current information technology like barcodes, QR codes, and RFID tags help, but not every organization is willing or capable of being connected. The coming of 5G networks opens new possibilities, including Internet of Things, smart chains, and big data analytics. The information expected should be useful to answer the where, when, what, how much, and who questions, as well as any specific instruction or document needed to expedite the flow of products, services, and money. Information and data are generated and used by multiple functions within different organizations in the supply chain. Therefore, internal units within a company, finance, marketing, operations, HR, procurement, logistics, innovation, and design are also part of the value chain. One possibility to integrate different systems and models is implementing an enterprise resource planning system, or ERP. Usually, initial aims for such implementation are associated to efficiency, cost reduction, quality, and decentralization. However, the end objective is to increase visibility, traceability, responsiveness, security, and flexibility in chains. Businesses expect profits from their operations. Therefore, their interest is to expedite the flow of money upstream from end consumers to suppliers. This graph shows rough percentages of money distribution. Nonetheless, it does not include the whole chain. For instance, how much may cotton growers or seed producers or farmers receive? The Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, proposed by the UN, have been embraced by many companies and are impacting supply chains and society at large. Green transportation is a way to contribute towards some of the SDGs. Then, the return flow of products and materials to which companies were not paying much attention in the last 30 or 40 years is critical in developing sustainable or greener supply chains. Every linkage generates waste, but currently the purpose is to collect valuable and useful products, parts, and materials that could be reused, repaired, recycled, or recovered, expecting a minimum for final disposal. These efforts are not necessarily new. Back in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s, beverage companies used returnable glass bottles that were reused many times. Companies like Coca-Cola had in place an efficient and effective process to return, clean, and reuse those bottles. We have seen that products and services flow downstream. Information flows in both directions, while money and generated waste for recycling or disposal purposes flow upstream. We are scratching the surface of the complexity associated to global supply chains, as well as core processes associated to the different flows. With these flows in mind, please work on the next activity for about 10 minutes, and then read the article exploring a network approach to supply chain management. Welcome back. I expect that after the discussion and the reading, you are aware of how complex global supply networks are. Before going into how the flow of goods and services are managed, let me show a simplified global supply network for smartphones. Although about 85% of iPhones are assembled in China, the figure shows where materials and parts come from. Germany, USA, South Korea, and Japan are among the top suppliers. France, the Netherlands, and Switzerland bring specialized suppliers to the list. But also countries like Mexico, Israel, and Singapore are part of the extended network. You also see competitors of Apple like Sony, Toshiba, and Samsung among its suppliers. This seems like a multicolored dish of spaghetti in which the iPhone's supply network is the simplest among those showed, while the one for laptops seems to be the more complex. Toyota, with a large concentration in the Americas, might be seen as surprisingly simple. Don't be deceived. Zooming in will show another reality. Despite deglobalization, economies are still growing, and it seems, according to the IMF, that the trend will continue in the years to come. On the other hand, the expression service economy became normal in the 1990s, since the world is relying more and more on services than on goods. Today, almost 67% of the world's GDP is generated by services, close to $70 trillion. Therefore, today, when analyzing supply networks, both goods and services are included. Although services are intangible, the key fact is that value regularly is co-created through the interaction of the service provider and service user. Before that interaction, it is like having the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that does not make any sense. But when completed, it could be a breathtaking experience. Let's look at health services. The traditional view has been on how things or goods move through the service. This figure shows multiple materials moving from producers to distributors, to hospitals, to surgeries and other medical practices, to consumers, and finally to bins. But less than 10% of inventory is visible. The other 90%, very few people might know where it is, if it still has not been used or consumed. Zooming into the flow of medicines in any health system, we can notice that new technology like barcode readers help to track and trace those medicines. Even returns or recalls from different stages in the chain flow towards appropriate disposal. Some health services use RFID to monitor and control the cold chain required by some medicines and vaccines to minimize damages. However, reality is much more complex. Unfortunately, events like a pandemic remind humanity of the challenges in delivering reliable and effective health services. Goods and services are intertwined in providing value to businesses and consumers and society. On the left-hand side of the slide, at the center of the figure is a box containing the true health services: surgery, orthopedics, cardiology, immunology, and many more. The first 3 rows of people on the right-hand side of the slide belong to that box. They have specialized skills and knowledge. Therefore, it is not feasible to move a GP, for instance, from its general practice to the intensive care unit. Just as in a restaurant, you won't take a waitress to replace the chef. Along the same lines, it is absolutely critical that updated and accurate information is always available to a person delivering a procedure to a hospitalized patient. Cases have been reported of patients arriving for appendectomy, and a different operation is performed due to a wrong tag. But even simple things like not having the right type of suture or stent may prevent a patient's operation and, in some cases, may put at risk their life. Therefore, everything noted in this figure and more is needed to provide an effective and reliable health service. Here is when essential concepts in supply chain management and operations like capacity, quality, inventory, resource planning, and risk management become crucial. For instance, during the pandemic, there was a world effort to develop vaccines. However, while the development took place, the focus was on providing treatment and protection. Consequently, companies changed their manufacturing facilities to produce PPE, personal protection equipment, and ventilators. The world passed from a shortage to a surplus, and then to spend millions in storage. At the same time, clinical beds were empty because there were not enough specialized staff for the intensive care units. The supply chain was not working. The supply chain management discipline includes multiple processes, and it is responsible for planning the flows of goods, information, people, and associated services provided, money, and returns of materials for reuse, recycling, recovery, or disposal. Welcome to our final and closing video on this very short introduction to MBA Essentials on global businesses and supply chains. Supply chain management offers a toolkit that may contribute significantly to develop sustainable supply networks. The main point is to realize that not every good or service purchased is equally important, valuable, or critical. A Slovenian economist, Peter Kraljic, introduced a model on an article entitled Purchasing Must Become Supply Management, published in the Harvard Business Review in 1983. It is a matrix to classify purchased goods and services. One variable is how much an organization spends per year on a particular item, material, or service contract. The other variable is associated to the risk an organization may face if a failure or shortage of an item occurs, and to the complexity of finding an alternative solution. The two variables lead to allocate goods and services into one of these four quadrants. Let's look to a principle that helps in allocating each item to a particular quadrant. The Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule, is a rule of thumb. 20% of all purchased items, goods and services, represent about 80% of the total amount spent in a year by an organization. These items in that 20% list are good candidates to be classified either as strategic or leverage items, because they are among those with the highest impact on profits. A similar approach is taken when considering risk associated and complexity in finding alternative solutions to an item. Remember, only few items are vital. Each quadrant triggers different procurement strategies and different approaches to managing relationships with suppliers. For non-critical items, the aim is efficiency. Therefore, a traditional purchasing management approach works. For leverage items, the aim is cost reduction, consolidating demand, and having a materials management approach. When dealing with bottleneck items, the aim is minimizing risk. Then, the approach is sourcing management, finding alternatives even on design. Finally, when the item is critical and/or strategic, the relationship is of partnership, aiming to co-create value for a sustainable future. One supplier may provide goods and services classified into different quadrants. Therefore, a more comprehensive approach is needed. The arrows in the figure suggest actions to enhance relationships with suppliers. Thank you for completing this very short and dense introduction to topics that are essential for an MBA when dealing with global supply chains.
Welcome to this short course on the global economy. Over the next 5 videos, we are going to talk about the key features of the global economy. Let's start with the question of what global economy is and why it is important to analyze global economic developments. The global economy is about almost all the economic activity taking place on Earth. It's about both the economic activity within the countries and the economic activity between the countries. Among many other important things, it's about production, consumption, technology, employment, as well as causes and consequences of economic policies. It's important for various economic units to understand the global economic developments. For example, for a policy-making institution, such as a central bank, it's important to analyze how global economic developments can affect domestic employment, production, and inflation. Considering the global trends, the governments may design and implement policies to promote certain industries or to reconsider the degree of restrictions in trade in goods and services. For a company, it's important to understand the economic developments and trends, to identify business opportunities that would decrease the cost of production, or increase the sales and profits, or diversify the sources of inputs and the revenues. One of the key issues in this course will be the forces affecting the degree of globalization across time. However, we should first start with defining the term globalization. Globalization refers to the process whereby countries remove barriers, for example by liberalizing markets, through removing restrictions which would otherwise prevent or limit the cross-border movement of goods, services, factors of production, financial assets, technology, among many other things. In contrast, deglobalization refers to the process whereby the degree of cooperation and integration of the economic activity across countries decreases due to various factors, including economic and political factors. Conceptually, for the globalization trends, we can talk about cross-border movements of the following: goods and services, capital, technology, labor, financial resources, among many other things. In the rest of the videos, we will try to understand more about these factors. In particular, the factors affecting cross-border movements in this, and how globalization can affect the strategic decisions of the economic units such as firms, investors, and policymakers. In this video, we are going to look at how global economy works. In particular, we are going to look at trade in goods and services. The cross-border movement of goods and services refer to what we call the international trade in goods and services. These include exports of goods and services, which refer to selling goods and services produced in one country to another country, as well as imports of goods and services, which refer to a case where the residents of one country buys goods and services produced in another country. The difference between exports and imports refer to the trade balance. A country may have higher exports than imports, in which case the country would have a trade surplus. The opposite case, where imports are greater than exports, is the case of trade deficit. In real life, the trade deficit or surplus need not be equal to zero at any point in time. In particular, if a country can borrow from residents of other countries, it does not need to have a balanced trade at any time. Instead, the imports of the country can be greater than its exports. It can run a trade deficit. However, when a country runs a trade deficit, it can do so either by having trade surplus in the future or by running down its financial assets, which can be accepted by the countries which are providing credit. An important question is whether it's an unfavorable thing to run trade deficit forever. The answer simply relies on whether the country can finance its trade deficit or not. For example, the United States is one of the countries which quite often has its imports exceeding its exports. In contrast, the United States can run trade deficits for a very long period of time, simply as long as foreign residents are willing to buy the financial securities issued by US government or American firms, it can run a trade deficit. Alternatively, as a leading exporter of technology and capital, US can generate income flows necessary to pay back for the financial liabilities accumulated due to trade deficit. Then the next big question is, what should be the pattern of international trade? In other words, which types of goods and services should a country export and import? Ideally, the key idea that governs the pattern of production and trade across countries is the competitive advantage. Competitive advantage refers to economy's ability to produce one good cheaper than the other things it can produce. In practice, a country may have absolute advantage in all goods, which implies that it can initially produce everything cheaper than other countries. However, it is not sensible for a country to attempt to produce everything from the perspective of efficiency in allocation of resources. Instead, if the countries specialize in the production of goods and services in which they have competitive advantage, each country will be producing the goods and services it specializes in at a cheaper cost. This can potentially lead to a case where both the countries and the global economy as a whole can enjoy a wide range of benefits, such as higher production of goods and services, lower production costs and prices, higher incomes, and higher consumption. In the third video, we continue to look at the question of how global economy works. In particular, we are going to focus on trade in technology and factors of production. One of the key observations regarding the cross-border trade is that countries engage in the trade in the factors of production, such as physical capital or technological know-how. For example, due to their competitive advantage in producing technology and physical capital, the advanced countries are mainly among the key net exporters of these items. In contrast, less developed countries are mainly net importers of capital goods and technological know-how. The comparative advantage of advanced countries in producing and exporting capital goods and technology are mainly driven by the relative abundance of human capital, as well as key resources that can be allocated to research and development in the advanced countries. The comparative advantage also results from strong institutions in the advanced countries, which increases the expected return from investments in research and development, and as well as high-tech industries which may require high initial fixed cost of investment that can only be recovered over time. As another key feature of advanced countries, highly developed financial markets can allow the firms in advanced countries to take investment projects whose financial returns will be realized only over time. The cross-border movements of physical capital and technology can also occur in the form of foreign direct investments, in addition to exports of capital goods and technological know-how. The foreign direct investment, or simply FDI, refers to the cross-border investment of a resident in one country in another country in the form of buying assets, such as land or factory or a production facility, with a long-term interest. FDIs differ from other types of cross-border investments with its direct focus on production of goods and services, as well as on longer-term commitment and economic interests. FDIs are also among the key mechanisms that lead to technology transfers across borders, especially from the advanced countries to less developed countries. Finally, another type of cross-border movement is movement of labor, which is another factor of production. Unlike movement of physical capital, cross-border movement of labor is less common in real life, both due to demand and supply side factors. Regarding the demand side factors, there are many rules and regulations within countries limiting free movement of labor across borders. In many cases, such rules and regulations aim at protecting the domestic labor markets as well as maintaining certain labor market standards within the country. However, such limitations can also result from supply-side factors such as economic and non-economic costs of emigrating and adapting to a new country. Finally, even in the absence of free movement of labor, the trade in goods and services still entail trade in labor services, as the labor input is implicitly included in the goods and services produced in one country and exported to the other. In this video, we continue looking at how global economy works with a focus on trade in financial assets. This is also about financial globalization that we cover shortly. As the international trade in goods and services grows, so does the international trade in financial assets. In principle, if there are obstacles in trading in financial assets, a country has to keep its foreign trade balance or keep its exports and imports of goods and services equal to each other. However, if financial flows are allowed for, then a country does not need to equalize its trade balance to zero in each period. For example, if a country or a company in one country can issue financial securities, such as bonds and equities, and sell to the rest of the world, then it can spend more on the imported goods and services than their own exports. In other words, they can run a current account deficit, or a firm can spend more than its revenues. Of course, this can be sustainable as long as the country or a firm has ability to meet its financial liabilities when they need to pay back. An important process which emerged parallel to the increase in the international trade in goods, services, and factors of production is the financial globalization. Financial globalization is simply the process of increasing the cross-border capital flows in the form of financial securities, such as debt and equity. This also includes the foreign direct investment, which refers to the investment of foreign residents in another country in the form of physical assets such as land, buildings, machinery, with the intention to produce goods and services. Conceptually, the financial globalization can improve the growth potential of the recipient of the flows. For example, there may be a large number of profitable business opportunities along with scarcity of financial resources to realize them. The financial globalization can potentially relieve the financial constraints of the firms and households, which can boost investment, decrease consumption volatility, as well as lead to a higher economic activity. However, in real world, episodes of rapid and massive inflows of capital, followed by outflows of capital, are associated with higher volatility in economic activity. For example, usually large short-term capital flows in the form of investments in bonds and equities can lead to rapid increase in the foreign debt of countries. It can also lead to appreciation of their currencies, loss of competitiveness, and surge in imports. These can be further associated with mismatches between the maturity and currency of the assets and the liabilities. For example, the episodes of surge in capital inflows can be associated with a buildup of short-term debt denominated in other currencies. All such dynamics can increase the vulnerability of the countries, including higher risk of sudden capital outflows and financial crisis. The risks can easily be amplified due to interlinkages between firms, financial institutions, and countries. Therefore, it's important to remember that enjoying the benefits of financial globalization requires implementing policies which will prevent buildup of and spillover of risks, as well as implementation of policies that would increase the resilience of firms, households, countries against the financial crisis. While the financial globalization is an old concept, it has speeded up in 1980s due to factors such as innovations in communication and information technologies, removal of international barriers on goods and services trade, and capital flows, as well as the regulation of the finance industry. This episode was associated with a rapid surge in capital flows among advanced countries and more notably between advanced countries and less developed countries. While the countries experiencing capital inflows enjoyed rapid increase in their economic activity, including in investment, production, and consumption, these episodes were also interrupted time to time with financial crises, such as the ones we observed in 1994-1995 in Mexico, and later in East Asian countries in 1997-1998. But more recently, the global economy as a whole experienced another crisis, which started in 2008 in the United States and spilled over mainly to other advanced countries as well as to some extent to the developing countries. These episodes clearly affected our understanding of evolution of possible economic and financial risks, as well as the question of whether and how policymakers can contain such risks. At the same time, these episodes affected directly or indirectly perceptions and the attitudes against globalization. In this video, we are going to look at the benefits and challenges of economic and financial globalization, as well as what challenges and policy priorities we may face going forward. It's important to identify how countries can increase the benefits of globalization as well as decrease the potential risks arising from them. In particular, the quality of domestic institutions appear to play a role in maximizing the potential benefits and minimizing the potential risks. For example, institutional quality matters a lot for a country's ability to attract FDI, which is a more stable source of foreign capital, as well as an important vehicle for job creation and technology transfers. As an important determinant of institutional quality of a country, robust legal and supervisory frameworks, absence of corruption, a high degree of transparency, and good corporate governance can all improve the investment climate in a country. This can, in return, improve the long-term growth potential. The institutional quality also affects a country's ability to design and implement appropriate economic policies. Such policies can also limit the extent to which adverse economic shocks disrupt the economic activity. For example, necessary financial regulations can prevent the buildup of excessive risk, which can lead to financial crises if they are not contained. Likewise, having necessary policy buffers, such as having fiscal surplus or low levels of government debt, can allow governments to implement necessary policies to mitigate the adverse effects of economic and financial crisis. As another example, a country with a highly credible central bank can enjoy low and stable inflation environment, which can further lead to benefits such as less volatility in financial markets or better foresight for the businesses, which further allow them to take better investment decisions. However, there is a number of long-lasting challenges concerning the globalization patterns. First, the winners and losers from globalization are not the same. For example, as economies specialize in goods that they have competitive advantage and stop producing those where they have competitive disadvantage, there may be an increase in the unemployment. This happens especially if there is a mismatch of skills required by the declining industries and the rising ones. If the adverse effects of such frictions are not considered and mitigated, then this can easily affect the attitudes towards globalization. Such a mitigation may require upskilling the individuals who are affected negatively from industrial transformation. It can also require lump sum income transfers such that the benefits of globalization is shared widely in the society. However, this can sometimes be complicated, as we also observe in the recent globalization trends around the world. For example, in recent years, events such as political calls for reintroduction of import restrictions or referendums for leaving important trade blocs, such as the Brexit episode, serve as important reminder where globalization trends may be severely disrupted if the benefits from globalization are not shared equally within the society. A related major development in the global economy is the recent change in the global economic order, which emerged first as the consensus in the aftermath of the Second World War. The increase in the free movement of goods, capital and services starting from 1950s, and in financial flows later, which formed the base of international economic cooperation during the Bretton Woods era, has later been interrupted in the decade following the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. For example, the recent slowdown in potential economic growth, an increase in the income and wealth inequality within countries are among the key determinants of the emergence of some forces affecting attitudes against globalization. More recently, the international economic and political developments concerning the relationship between China and the advanced Western economies suggest that there is a major reversal of the pro-globalization tendency, which earlier resulted in substantial increase in global welfare, while leading to a major decline in inflation, increase in international trade, consumption, production, employment, and incomes. Finally, as a major global challenge, the climate change and the policies to limit the adverse effects of climate change are among the key factors which will determine the patterns of production, investment, and consumption across borders. In particular, both the potential adverse effects of climate change and policies to limit the adverse effects and to facilitate a smooth transition to new economic order will matter for how economic activity within and across the borders will evolve in the decades to come.
Now that you're a bit more familiar with the course, we'll move on to week 2, where we have another selection of topics for you. These include accounting and analytics, sustainable development goals, and digital innovation. In the first module, Dr. Anthony Devine will walk you through the basics of accounting and analytics, including what the typical accountant needs to know and what the future could hold in these topics. In the second module, Dr. Jingru Lee will guide you through the history and essence of Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, and how they can be strategically integrated into your business endeavors. Finally, Professor Nurana Kerr will share some insights into the ever-changing world of digital innovation and how it's vital for businesses to be aware of. I hope you enjoy this week's activities, and I'll see you again at week 3.
Welcome to this section of the MOOC on accounting analytics. We're going to start by giving an overview of what accounting analytics is and some of the key aspects of how it can be used in practice. Accounting analytics refers to the application of data analysis, statistical techniques, and technology to the field of accounting in order to gain insights, make informed decisions, and optimize financial processes. It involves using data to examine financial information, identify trends, patterns, and anomalies, and extract valuable insights that can guide strategic and operational decisions within an organization. Accounting analytics combines the principles of both accounting and data analysis to enhance the accuracy, efficiency, and effectiveness of financial management and reporting. Key aspects of accounting analytics. Data analysis. Accounting analytics involves collecting, processing, and analyzing vast amounts of financial data. This data can include transaction records, financial statements, budget figures, cost data, and more. Advanced tools and software. Advanced analytics tools and software are used to perform complex calculations, data modeling, predictive analysis, and visualization. These tools help accountants and financial professionals to understand the data and its implications more effectively. Data visualization. Data visualization techniques are employed to present complex financial information in a visual format such as graphs, charts, and dashboards. This makes it easier to understand and communicate financial insights to stakeholders. Decision support. Accounting analytics provides decision makers with valuable insights to support strategic planning, resource allocation, budgeting, forecasting, and risk management. Cost analysis. By analysing cost data, organisations can identify cost drivers, allocate expenses accurately, and make more informed decisions about cost reduction and resource allocation. Performance measurement. Accounting analytics helps in measuring financial performance against key performance indicators, identifying areas of improvement, and assessing the success of financial strategies. Fraud detection. Analytics can be used to detect unusual or suspicious transactions and patterns that might indicate fraud or financial irregularities. Budgeting and forecasting. Organisations can use accounting analytics to create more accurate financial forecasts and budget plans based on historical data and market trends. Strategic planning. Insights from accounting analytics can guide strategic decision-making, such as product pricing, expansion plans, and investment strategies. Compliance and auditing. Analytics can help ensure compliance with financial regulations and standards. It also aids auditors in assessing the accuracy of financial statements. Overall, accounting analytics empowers organisations to move beyond traditional accounting practices and tap into the power of data-driven insights to enhance financial management, make better business decisions, and achieve their strategic objectives. It's a critical tool in today's data-driven business landscape that enables finance professionals to provide more value to their organisations. Accounting analytics and traditional accounting differ in their approach, tools, and focus. Traditional accounting involves recording, classifying, and summarising financial transactions to prepare financial statements such as the balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement. The focus is on accurately recording historical data for reporting purposes. Accounting analytics goes beyond recording historical data. It involves analysing and interpreting financial information to gain insights, identify trends, and make data-driven decisions. The emphasis is on using data analysis techniques to extract actionable insights from financial data. In summary, traditional accounting is the foundation for accurate financial reporting and compliance, while accounting analytics leverages data analysis to extract meaningful insights for informed decision-making, strategic planning, and optimization of financial processes. The shift towards accounting analytics reflects the increasing importance of data-driven decision-making in today's business environment. What is big data? Big data refers to extremely large and complex datasets that exceed the capabilities of traditional data processing and analysis tools. These datasets are characterized by their volume, velocity, variety, and veracity, often referred to as the 4 V's of big data. Let's take a look at each of these. Volume. Big data involves vast amounts of data. This can range from terabytes to petabytes and beyond, often generated by various sources such as social media, sensors, transaction records, and more. The volume of data of this size is impossible for the ordinary human brain to consume and analyze to identify trends or patterns. Velocity. Data are generated and collected at an unprecedented speed. With the proliferation of connected devices and real-time systems, data can flow in rapidly and continuously. Think about the amount of data that is generated by Amazon every hour of every day on the buying behavior, or the amount of clicks that individuals make on products. Variety. Data comes in various formats and types. It includes structured data, like traditional databases, semi-structured data, like JSON or XML files, and unstructured data, like text, images, or videos. This diversity makes handling and analysing big data more complex. It is the richness of data variety that presents unique opportunities to gain insights into behaviours and patterns within big data sets. And finally, veracity. Veracity refers to the quality and reliability of data. Due to the sheer volume and diverse sources, big data often includes noise, inconsistencies, and inaccuracies, making it essential to validate and clean the data before analysis. In addition to the 4 V's, some discussions also include other attributes, like variability, data's inconsistency, value, the potential insights that can be extracted, and complexity, the challenges in processing and understanding the data. The significance of big data lies in its potential to provide valuable insights, patterns, and correlations that were previously hidden due to the limitations of traditional data processing methods. Organizations across various industries leverage big data to gain a deeper understanding of customer behavior and preferences, enhance decision-making by analyzing large, diverse datasets, improve operational efficiency and optimize processes, enable predictive analytics to forecast trends and outcomes, facilitate personalized marketing and product development, detect anomalies, fraud and security breaches, drive innovation through data-driven insights. To manage and process big data effectively, specialized tools, technologies, and methodologies have emerged, including distributed computing frameworks, NoSQL databases, and data warehouses. These technologies allow organizations to store, process, and analyze big data in a scalable and efficient manner. Overall, big data has revolutionized the way organizations collect, analyze, and utilize data, enabling them to make more informed decisions and uncover insights that can drive business growth and innovation. The great majority of accountants and accounting students are not expected to become data scientists. What all practitioners should learn is data literacy. For example, they need to know and understand what types of questions can be asked, what types of information are available, and what types of analysis should be run. So, the typical accountant does not need to know how to do data science, but does need to understand what data science is. Being data literate will help accountants make better requests of the data scientists. Accounting analytics takes away the need for accountants to crunch large datasets to draw out conclusions. For example, accounting analytics is a significant advantage to forensic accountants who are searching for patterns in large amounts of data to identify fraudulent activity. Utilizing accounting analytic techniques and big data, forensic accountants can draw in multiple types of data, for example, emails, phone data, financial transactions, spending habits, and explore statistically significant relationships which may uncover nefarious behavior. Accounting analytics is not the end of the traditional accountant. Instead, it represents an evolution and enhancement of traditional accounting practices. While accounting analytics introduces new tools, techniques, and approaches to analyzing financial data, it does not negate the foundational principles and practices of traditional accounting. And here's why. Core functions remain relevant. Traditional accounting is essential for accurate financial recording, reporting, compliance with regulations, and for tax purposes. These functions continue to be crucial for maintaining transparency, accountability, and legal requirements. Accounting standards and regulations. National regulators such as the FRC require companies to adhere to generally accepted accounting principles and international financial reporting standards. These standards ensure consistency and comparability of financial reporting. Ensuring alignment and compliance with these standards is still a task that is required to be undertaken by accountants. Human judgment and interpretation. While accounting analytics can process vast amounts of data, human judgment is crucial for interpreting results, making strategic decisions, and ensuring that insights align with the organization's goals and values. Ethical considerations. Traditional accounting includes ethical considerations and professional judgment, especially in areas such as financial reporting, audits, and fraud detection. These aspects require human oversight and expertise. Human interaction and communication. Accounting involves communication with stakeholders, including investors, regulators, and clients. The ability to explain financial information, trends, and insights in a clear and understandable manner remains a vital skill. Adaptation and integration. Rather than replacing traditional accounting, accounting analytics complements it. Organizations integrate accounting analytics to enhance decision-making and efficiency, while traditional accounting still covers fundamental financial processes. In essence, accounting analytics transforms how accountants work by introducing data-driven insights and efficiency improvements. However, traditional accounting remains the bedrock for accurate financial record keeping, compliance, and ethical considerations. The future of accounting is likely to involve a symbiotic relationship between traditional accounting principles and the advanced capabilities brought by accounting analytics and technology. What does the future hold? The biggest development area for the future of accounting analytics is with artificial intelligence. It is likely to be transformative, revolutionizing how accounting processes are performed, insights are gained, and decisions are made. There are some key trends and possibilities for the future of accounting analytics with AI. Automated data entry and bookkeeping. AI-powered systems can automate routine data entry tasks, reducing human error and freeing up accountants for more strategic work. AI can categorize transactions, reconcile accounts, and generate financial reports. Advanced data analysis. AI can analyze even more volumes of data quickly and accurately, uncovering complex patterns and correlations that might not be apparent to human analysis. This includes trend analysis, predictive analytics, and anomaly detection. Fraud detection and prevention. AI algorithms can continuously identify unusual or fraudulent activity in financial transactions, enabling timely intervention and reducing the risk of financial fraud. Cash flow forecasting. AI can predict cash flow patterns based on historical data and market trends, helping organizations to manage their finances more effectively and plan for future expenses and investments. Integration with blockchain. AI can work in tandem with blockchain technology to enhance transparency, traceability, and accuracy in financial transactions. While the integration of AI into accounting analytics promises significant benefits, it also raises ethical considerations such as data privacy, bias in algorithms, and the role of human oversight. The future will likely involve a balance between human expertise and AI capabilities to ensure optimal outcomes.
In this section, I will present a brief history around how the Sustainable Development Goals are raised. In September 2015, all member states of the United Nations have agreed to adopt Transforming the World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is a universal action plan for global cooperation on sustainable development for the period 2015 to 2030. Leave no one behind. That defining principle of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a shared promise by every country to work together to secure the rights and well-being of everyone on a healthy and thriving planet. The 2030 Agenda has defined 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, with 169 targets and 232 indicators. Though those global goals have been adopted in 2015, one can say their history goes back several decades. The idea of sustainable development could be traced back to a pivotal United Nations conference held in Stockholm in 1972, called the Conference on the Human Environment. It was the first conference ever of the UN members recognizing that the economic development and human activities on nature has caused alarming risks and threats to our planet of a magnitude and a scale that were unprecedented. The concept of sustainable development began to gain momentum in 1987, the Brundtland Report, Our Common Future. For the first time, the Brundtland Report introduced the need for the integration of economic development, environmental protection, and social justice and inclusion. It defined sustainable development for the first time as a development that fulfills the needs of current generations without compromising the ability of future generations to fulfill their own needs. So this is an idea of intergenerational justice and intergenerational sustainability, that we, the current generation, have a responsibility to the future to manage our lives and manage the economy in such a way that we do not hinder future generations in meeting their needs. The concept was then embraced and elaborated further at the 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, also known as the Real Earth Summit. More than 178 countries adopted the Agenda 21 Action Program during the Earth Summit. The Agenda 21 was a comprehensive plan of action to build a global partnership for sustainable development with a particular focus on combating global health issues. After the Earth Summit and Agenda 21, the next milestone was the unanimous adoption from all member states of the Millennium Declaration during the Millennium Summit in New York. The start of a new millennium posed a unique opportunity to create a new strategy, adapted to the latest realities and needs of the world in the 21st century. The summit, held in September 2000, was the largest gathering of the heads of states and governments of all time until then. It led to the elaboration of the 8 Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, to be achieved by the year 2015. The Millennium Development Goals formed the blueprint to reduce extreme poverty and started an unprecedented global effort to tackle the issue of poverty. However, it also received serious criticism from global society for its missing role of equity, gender issues, lack of strong objectives, and disparities between nations. More than that, it was noted that some of these goals were not being implemented. In 2012, again, in Rio, in a conference also known as Rio Plus 20 Conference, on the 20th anniversary of the Earth Summit, governments get together and reflected about how to put sustainable development in front of the world so that people everywhere understand the urgency. They took a survey of governments, and initially the list was about 300 proposed goals that would not do. So over the 3 years, they negotiated, compressed, chose the priorities, aggregated objectives, and so forth, and by the middle of 2015 came to 17 high priority goals for prosperity, people, and planet, or for economic, social, and environmental objectives. And those 17 goals were embedded in the overall commitment to Agenda 2030. And they became, therefore, the framework of cooperation for the period of 2030. Let's have a look how sustainable development goals are relevant to businesses. The 2030 Agenda has 5 main focus. It is set to deliver a right-based agenda for people, to end poverty and hunger in all their forms and dimensions. An agenda for prosperity, to ensure that all human beings are included and can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives in a harmony with nature. An agenda for protecting the planet, our common home, from degradation, sustainably managing its resources, and taking urgent action on climate change. An agenda for peace, to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies which are free from fear and violence. And an agenda to work together, to mobilize the means required for implementation through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development, with the participation of all countries, all stakeholders, and all people. To reach the goals, everyone needs to do their part: government, private sector, civil society, and us, the general public. In 2000, Kofi Annan, the United Nations Secretary, initiated UN Global Compact to emphasize the role of businesses in this globalized campaign towards sustainability. The 10 principles define what a responsible business looks like, calling on all companies to operate in ways that, at a minimum, respect fundamental responsibilities in the areas of human rights, labor, the environment, and anti-corruption. In practice, This means a company should identify, prevent, mitigate, and account for any negative impacts it may have on society, to local community, and the environment, and establishes a culture of integrity and compliance. Companies should carefully consider business risks related to each SDG, the impacts they may have, and adjust their business practices to do no harm. The SDGs will also provide a compass, an important yardstick, against which businesses can align their own key performance indicators and measures the impact of their own policies and practices. By doing so, they can align their sustainability strategies with international priorities. Importantly, a culture of responsibility must be integrated throughout the organization. Accountability mechanisms and due process should be developed and embedded into organization daily activities and through its global value chain. This involves upholding the same standards wherever companies have a presence, and understanding that good practices in one area do not make up for doing harm in another, either directly through its subsidiary or indirectly through its suppliers. In its letter to CEO in 2018, the BlackRock CEO Larry Fink mentioned that to prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. Companies must benefit all of their stakeholders, including shareholders, employees, customers, and the communities in which they operate. Business has a central role to play towards sustainable development and social inclusion, creating shared values and entering into a new era of corporate sustainability as the business as usual. In previous sections, we have introduced what SDGs and how they're relevant to businesses. And now we're going to look into how business can do to integrate SDGs into their daily activities. There are a few tips here to help us to understand. First, to understand the goals, the relevant targets, and the KPIs to see how they are directly or indirectly related to their business activities or through their contractual relationships with suppliers and customers. Step 2, define priorities. Companies should prioritize SDG targets by considering which will have the biggest impact in terms of risks and opportunities in medium to long term, and which goals the company has the ability to contribute to achieving progress in. It may be that a company is contributing to all of the 17 goals, but when allocating resources and defining the timeline, it is important to start with those targets which create the largest impact. However, this should not be a cherry-picking activity by working on the easy and low-hanging fruits. Step 3, set the goals. Once the key SDGs are identified, it is important to link those goals to actual business targets and KPIs to monitor and communicate progress. Quite often, companies may already have existing targets and actions which they can leverage while developing their SDG strategies. Step 4, integration. In order to make the SDG strategy viable and effective, companies must integrate those targets into existing strategy, taking into account business models, procurement, and research and development process, and supply chain transformation. By realigning sustainability strategies to achieve both corporate goals and SDGs, companies can identify areas where they can draw from existing commitment and projects to contribute positively towards SDGs. Step 5, innovation and collaborate. The SDGs provide a framework for innovation, creating business growth opportunities and new business models, products, or services that drive progress towards the goals. It also helps to identify partners within sectors and across different industries, which enable organizations to scale up their efforts and ultimately achieve the goals. Sixth, report and communicate. Companies need to be ready to communicate their progress in addressing goals linked to SDGs. It is crucial to integrate the SDGs into the core business reporting process to avoid duplicated efforts and ensure transparency and accessibility of their performance to various internal and external stakeholders. There are some useful tools and methodologies that emerge for business to understand better how they can contribute to the SDGs in a holistic way. For example, the UN Global Compact that we have discussed in previous section has asked the companies to report on their communication on progress, and the failure to provide the COP would result in a naming and shaming practices. Global Reporting Initiative, which is a voluntary reporting framework, and it's asked and help business to understand how they can contribute to the SDGs. The European Sustainability Reporting Standard were issued recently by Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive to apply to all companies where their headquarters located in Europe countries, and not only to ask them to report upon their performance in related to SDGs, but also to keep an eye on their suppliers along their supply chain. International Sustainability Standard Board has recently issued 2 standards in related to sustainability, addressing how business could report on their performance in relating to climate change. The UN Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, released in 2011, the aim of the reporting framework is to help business to report on their performance in related to human rights. And all these tools and methodologies are going to help business to know better about how they have achieved so far and what they could improve in the coming future.
Nowadays, we hear a lot of talking about digital technologies, such as artificial intelligence, robots, virtual reality. Do we know what to do with all these new technologies? How to do it? Where is the low-hanging fruit? How do we get started? And that's what I'm going to explain today, digital transformation. Recent advances in digital technologies, for example, connected autonomous vehicles, 4D printing, are fostering dramatic changes in the economy and organizations. The pandemic has demonstrated the need for companies to adapt and accelerate their adoption of emerging technologies. Especially artificial intelligence, augmented reality, new technologies like this are turbo boosting businesses in every sector. But for any business to undergo a successful digital transformation, it needs innovative managers and analysts with true understanding of digital business and innovation. A significant driver of these changes is digital innovation. I define digital innovation as the creation of and consequent change in market offerings, business processes, or models that result from the use of digital technology. Basically, digital innovation is applying digital technology to solve problems, improve processes, or create new opportunities. Digital innovation is not just about technology, it's also about how technology interacts with human systems, be it in business, healthcare, education, or even social interactions. Digital innovations are changing the ways products and services are developed, produced, and used. For example, innovations using digital technologies enable the sharing of inputs or resources, such as autonomous vehicles, tools, and accommodations. Such innovations are disrupting traditional markets, including media and entertainment, automotive, rental and sales, hotels and hospitality, and even temporary labor markets. Digital transformation is an ongoing process to transform and improve business performance by changing the way a company thinks and operates. Unlike common perceptions, digital transformation isn't only about the technology you adopt, but also involves people, processes, and the portfolio. I see 4 components of digital transformation. First one is a digital transformation as a complex and multi-phase socio-technical effort involving practices and processes. Second one is organizations could apply and exploit digital technologies through digital transformation. Third one is organizations could improve and significantly change their organizational structures, roles, and interactions for the purpose of enabling capabilities. The last one is organizations are able to generate and capture value from novel data, digital solution, and remain capable of doing so. Digital innovation or digital business innovation is that spark of creativity that leads to development of new technology or innovative applications of existing digital technology. Digital strategy comes in by digital technologies. Strategy, what I mean, is an action plan that helps managers to understand the ecosystem and then use the technology to get insights from this data and compete effectively. A company can take actions which could result in more highly personalized products and services.
Welcome back. Today, you'll be moving into week 3, where you'll gain more insights into 2 exciting topics, project management and change management. In the first module, Tracy Dodson and Neil Dodson will give you some insights into project management. You will get to grasp project methods, processes, and tools, and understand the important role of the project manager and their accountability in practice. Following that, David Potter will guide you through the topic of change management. Here, you'll learn a conceptual model for framing the analysis of organizational culture, blockers and enablers of successful cultural change, and the role of leadership and modeling leadership style in cultural change success. I hope throughout this course you're both learning a lot and seeing how big and complex even a taster of an MBA can be. There's so much more to learn. I hope you are excited about what you have learned so far and are looking forward to the final week of learning. I'll see you again there.
Hello, and welcome to this introduction to the wonderful world of project management. My name is Tracy Dodson, and I direct the project management courses at the Adam Smith Business School here at Glasgow University. During this brief overview of project management, we're going to introduce you to some of the key concepts of project management that will hopefully stimulate your interest and encourage you to find out more. So let's start by looking at project management. What is it and why is it important? There's no doubt that project management is used widely in business. There's lots of evidence that demonstrates the importance of project management as a business discipline. For instance, in 2021, a study by the Harvard Business Review estimated that by 2027, some 90 million people worldwide will be working in project management. And the annual global value of the project-based economic activity, or what we also know as the project economy, will have reached £15 trillion. The UK-based Project Management Institute predicts that as many as 25 million new project management professionals will be needed in the next decade. In 2020, a study by PricewaterhouseCoopers found that the gross value added to the UK economy by project management during the period 2018 to 2020 was an estimated 156 billion. Further indications of the wide usage of project management were identified in a 2018 worldwide survey undertaken by the Project Management Institute, which looked at trends in project management. They received feedback from 4,455 project management practitioners, 447 senior executives, and over 800 project management office directors from a wide variety of industries worldwide. This comprehensive research identified that 94% of those companies questioned stated that they used project management as their primary business process, and said that by using a recognised approach to implement change, they were more confident of being able to deliver business benefits. What does this tell us? There is no doubt that project management is important, and that more and more companies are adopting this approach as the preferred way to implement change. As more and more companies are turning to project management to deliver consistent business results, there is no doubt that project management is seen as the best way to implement business change and to drive outcomes as quickly and effectively as possible. So, what exactly is project management? Well, to put it succinctly, it's a defined way of managing an activity using a distinct set of tools, processes and procedures to achieve a specific outcome. Hereby is the issue. Project management seems to be ubiquitous. Everything nowadays seems to be defined as a project. This is a problem for the industry, as research tells us that for an activity to be legitimately called a project, it needs a number of characteristics that include dedicated resources, unique objectives, a defined scope, a governance model, an agreed budget and timescale, and be a unique activity that has not been done before. Let's have a look at this proposed definition of a project by Mailer. Managing activities as projects has become increasingly common. However, it's important to understand the difference between managing an activity using a few of the project management tools and establishing an activity as a project with all of the requisite processes and procedures in place. Let's turn to the literature. A common theme emerges from the scholarly work to suggest that a project is a one-time undertaking with a specific goal, defined tasks, its own budget and a schedule. And in addition, it must have the characteristics of uniqueness and be associated with the unknown and include some complexity and uncertainty. In summary, I'd like to propose the definition by Larson and Gray in 2014, who define a project as an established objective, a defined lifespan, the objective of doing something that's not been done before, a specific time, cost and performance requirements. The project manager is central to the mechanism of project management delivery. Buring 2019 defines the project manager as the person given the responsibility and authority to manage the project on a day-to-day basis to deliver the required products within the constraints. They select the team who will execute the project and oversee their work to make sure it's done properly and on time by following a plan. Bottom line is that as a project manager, you can't be accountable and guarantee the success of a project unless it has a defined scope, clear objectives, a governance model, a dedicated team of resources, an agreed start and finish, and its own budget. The project manager and their unique skill set will be explored later in this course. So we agree that project management is the go-to approach for business. We know there are a lot of activities that are described as projects, but are really only activities that are using one or two project management processes. For the project to be delivered successfully, the project needs to include all of the characteristics that we've mentioned: an established objective, a defined lifespan, the objective of doing something that's not been done before, specific time, cost and performance requirements, and the project manager needs to make sure the project has all of these in place before the project starts. This is an important point as we move through this course. In the comments below, briefly share the last time you heard the word project being used for an activity. Did it meet our criteria? At the end of this course, come back to this post and read what others have described. How many didn't meet the criteria? I suspect there'll be a few. We've spoken about project management being a special way of managing a task or activity, a coordinated way. And the project manager's superpower is the knowledge of the methods, processes and tools we use. In this video, I'm going to give you a taste of what these are. Let's start by looking at project methodologies. What is a project methodology? A good description of a methodology is that it's a strictly defined combination of logically related practices, methods and processes. And what these do is that they determine how best to plan, develop, control and deliver the project. It's actually a really good tool for project managers to steer the project. It's an agreed delivery approach and it gives structure to the activities. All projects run with a methodology. Why is a methodology necessary? Why can't we just work out what needs to be done and just get on with it? It's all about applying a standard approach. And by that, I mean an approach that everybody agrees with at the beginning of the project, so that everybody understands what's going to be done throughout the project. There are a number of methodologies that are used across a wide range of industries. So let's have a look at this next slide, which gives you an example of a few of the main ones. What I'd like you to do is some research of your own. I'd like you to Google project methodologies. What you'll find is that there are a number of them out there. In particular, have a look at the agile methodology, which is actually the opposite of the one I'm going to speak about, which is waterfall. Although I'm not a fan, the agile methodology does have a place. I want you to make a note of the sort of projects for which you might consider agile as being the better approach. Identify the difference between the two methodologies. Research tells us that 93% of all projects use the waterfall methodology. So let's take some time to look at it in a bit more detail. It's a classical model used primarily in the systems development life cycle to create a linear and sequential approach. And if you think about it, it's termed waterfall because the model develops systemically from one place to another in a downward fashion, like cascading. Considering the project as having a life cycle is a really useful way to explain the associated activities. Let's look at the project life cycle in more detail. Whatever the methodology, a project has 4 discrete stages. These begin with initiation or feasibility, and this is where the project idea is developed into a business case to identify whether it's financially viable. Often, this stage is driven by the business and not by the project manager. The next stage is called planning. And this is where all of the work is done. The budget, the resources, the schedule, the stakeholder management plan, the risk management plan. This is where it's all developed. The next stage is execution. And this is where we put the plan into action. And the project activities are monitored and controlled. And the last stage is project closure, which is a very important stage. It's where the change is handed over, the project administration tasks are completed, and the project is actually closed. There are a number of different terms used to describe these 4 stages, and some organisations market their own definitions of the project life cycle. However, regardless of the number of different terms, the concept is the same. The project lifecycle provides a method of dividing the different activities in some sort of order. And from a project management perspective, it makes them much easier to manage. The stages are contained, and at the end of each stage, the project is reassessed, and the project manager presents the project progress to the steering board for endorsement to move to the next stage. This through what we call a stage gate. What it allows us to do is to make a decision at important phases of the project. And in some cases, that decision might be not to continue. This is the opposite to Scrum or Agile, which divides projects up into individual sprints, and the project manager and the team doesn't know till the end of one little sprint what they're going to be doing in the next sprint. Waterfall's approach is highly methodical. It emphasises a clean transfer of information at each step. Now, let's move on to some of the tools we use in project management. All projects, no matter how small, use a basic tool set, which includes a project plan, a schedule, a risk log, and a budget. There are a number of other tools we can adopt, but for the purpose of this course, I want to introduce you to the most important ones. We saw that the project planning stage is where a lot of the initial work happens. In this phase, the project manager looks at what the client wants, identifies all of the tasks that need to be done, develops a budget to cover all of the costs, develops a detailed schedule to identify how long it's going to take. We use scheduling software to develop the timeframes. Microsoft Project is the industry standard. Budgets are normally developed in Excel, and we use a risk identification method to work out what might have a negative impact on our ability to deliver. One of the most important things about any project is to lock in the scope and the deliverables. This is the first stage of the project planning cycle and underpins everything else. It's particularly important in the waterfall methodology, as any changes in the execution phase can be very costly. The project manager then rolls all of this information up into a project plan. The project plan clearly states what will be delivered, when it will be delivered, and how much it will cost. Once the client has signed this off, the project manager is accountable for making it happen. So you can see how important detailed planning is. Once the project plan has been endorsed, any change to the scope, time, or budget are dealt with using a formal change request process. So to conclude, we've learnt about the project life cycle, which we know has got 4 distinct parts: feasibility, planning, execution, and closure. The framework that we lay over the life cycle to help us manage the activities within each stage is called the methodology. The most used methodology is the waterfall methodology. The project manager has a number of tools and templates in their toolbox, but the main ones are Gantt charting to produce a schedule, Excel to produce a budget, and adopting a risk identification and management process. So as you can see, there's a lot to manage in a project from start to finish. However, the use of these tools and techniques is what ensures that projects are delivered successfully. And it's also why good project managers are in demand worldwide.
The role of the project manager is summed up nicely by Zielinski, 2005, who says, project managers must simultaneously satisfy the needs of often finicky clients, adhere to tight deadlines, and marshal sometimes non-existent resources to get the job done, all while shepherding and motivating and cajoling a diverse universe of personalities up and down the organisational food chain. They are held responsible for project results, but often have little power over personnel or resources. It is not always that bad, but if you perform a search for project manager skills, you will be presented with a range of skills so large that you will be justified in assuming that to be a project manager, it is necessary to be some kind of superhero with multiple superpowers. There is, of course, an element of truth in this, and project managers require many skills to plan, execute, and control projects. Some of these skills include leadership skills, to guide and motivate their teams and to influence others to achieve project success. Organizational and time management skills, to handle multiple tasks and manage project schedules. Risk management skills. Managing risks is a critical aspect of project management. Project managers must be able to assess potential risks and minimize negative impacts. Problem-solving skills. Project managers must have the ability to analyze issues and adapt plans as necessary. Conflict resolution. Project managers should be able to handle disagreements and find win-win situations. Financial management. Project managers should be able to develop and monitor budgets. Technical knowledge is sometimes required, but controversially sometimes a handicap. If you pursue a detailed course, you'll learn about the issues in this area. Adaptability and flexibility. Project managers must be flexible and adaptable to changes in scope, priorities, and resources. Stakeholder management skills. Project managers should be able to engage stakeholders, manage expectations, and address concerns. These skills are not exhaustive, but the specific skill set required will depend on the nature of the project, the industry, and the organizational context. But fundamentally, all the skills I've just mentioned rely on one overarching and essential characteristic of the successful project manager, and that is that they should have excellent communication skills. Usually, the PM does not need to have detailed technical knowledge or need to have the financial skills of an accountant. These skills can be contained in the project team. But they do need to have the ability to coordinate the activities of the team, and this is down to communication of the highest order. The PM must not only communicate with everyone involved, but will often have to interpret information so that it can be understood by business representatives, engineers and technicians, and end users and stakeholders. The objective is to create a shared understanding, so excellent communication skills are essential to convey information clearly, to address concerns, to resolve issues, and ultimately to produce a common understanding. Do you have these skills? Then maybe project management is for you.
We hope you've enjoyed this introduction to project management. Whatever industry you work in, project management will be a big part of what you do. I've been managing projects for over 20 years, and I can tell you that project management is fast-paced, it's exciting, it's stimulating, it's challenging, and it's lots of fun, as well as being lucrative. It's also a profession you can do all over the world. Here at Glasgow, project management is an important module in our MBA. I hope this course has given you an insight into the wonderful world of project management and that you're encouraged to find out more.
Hello everybody, it's David here, David Potter, Dr. David Potter, although going forward, simply David. It's really good to be here with you today. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to introduce you to the concept of organisational culture and cultural change. And essentially what the video will do is to define organisational culture and cultural change and to introduce you to a model or a framework that will be very helpful for you when it comes to thinking about the subject of organisational culture, and it will also help you be very specific about how you would focus in on what it is you're trying to change in cultural terms. So, Edgar Schein, who is a world-class and famous thinker, a seminal thinker on the subject of leading cultural change in organisations, defines organisational culture as a pattern of shared basic assumptions developed by a group as it solved its problems of external adaptation and internal integration. And what is really useful about that definition is it points towards the concept of sharedness and sharing basic assumptions or beliefs. And these are beliefs or assumptions that are learned from our role models as we go through our life. And the purpose of that process is so that a group of people can adapt to its environment and indeed master its environment through the process of cultural change. My colleague, Professor James McCalman, and I, in our book Leading Cultural Change, published in 2015 through Kogan Page, define cultural change as a fundamental change in the meanings that cultural members attribute to their values and assumptions, which leads to a shift in the nature of cultural themes in use and the expressive content of the cultural paradigm. Alvesen and Svenningsson, 2008, think about cultural change as a cultural change is not that management tries to impose new behaviours or talk, but a change of the ideas, values and meanings of large groups of people. So what the two definitions have in common is the focus is on ideas and interpretations of social events, and therefore cultural change is inherently creatively subjective. So how should we or could we think of organisational culture? Well, one way to think about it is that the culture of an organisation is the foundations that the organisation is built upon. And those foundations are made up of very specific elements. The first one is assumptions. And one could argue that assumptions are kinds of beliefs. Assumptions are the unconscious, tacit expectations we have about the nature of our day-to-day experience. And these unconscious assumptions drive our behaviours and our decisions. And then we have a higher level, which is beliefs. And the beliefs are much more certain than assumptions. They are much more concrete. And when our beliefs are challenged, this can be quite difficult. And, as we know, it can be emotionally stressful. And this brings us to our values. And our values are products of our beliefs. So our values indicate the degree of emotional attachment that we have got towards a particular belief. So, if we believe that doing an MBA is going to help us develop a career and our leadership skills and our management skills, then the likelihood is that we will value doing an MBA. And then we have cultural themes. And cultural themes are basically the sum of assumptions, beliefs and values which form our attitudes towards everyday life and which dictate the way in which we interact with people, the way we make decisions and what our expressive leadership style is. So here's an exercise I'd like to leave you with. Why don't you consider any one of the following organisations like Google, Apple and McDonald's and see if you can identify examples of values that continue to shape their corporate culture. I think you'll enjoy that exercise. So, in video 2, we're going to look together at cultural change blockers and enablers. And for the time being, I thank you very much for your time and your attention, and we'll speak soon. Thank you. Hi there, it's David Potter here again. Really good to be with you. Today, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at cultural change blockers and enablers. The video will review some fundamental blockers and enablers to successful cultural change. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on what you could call a meta-analysis. This was a review of multiple research papers that I conducted as part of my own research to develop some books that I published and co-published. I would like to give you an insight into some of these results relative to blockers and enablers, which I think you will find really interesting. So, we are also going to briefly review force field analysis, which is an excellent management tool that you can use for analysing blockers and enablers and building strategies to manage these. So, let's look at the results of my meta-study. In terms of blockers across the literature, findings indicated that up to 75% of change participants commonly lacked confidence that the projects would succeed. They weren't convinced that they would succeed in terms of cultural change or indeed change management. 60% of projects involving either cultural change management or traditional change management also failed to meet aspects of their schedules, their budgets, and their quality goals. 58% of respondents cited that changing mindsets and attitude was mission critical. If you couldn't change the mindset, so let's say the management team had a fixed mindset based on the work of Carol Dweck, as opposed to a growth mindset, then that could be very problematic and a very powerful blocker. 49% of respondents cited that established beliefs and values deeply ingrained in the culture can be major change blockers. And, unfortunately, 32% of respondents cited a lack of senior management support as a major change blocker, which draws our attention to the importance of authentic, committed leadership. In terms of enablers to successful cultural change, 92% of respondents cited that top management sponsorship was mission critical. So adopting a participative approach to building the change programme was a really powerful enabler. And transparency, good communication channels, being open and honest with everybody was also very powerful enablers and contributed towards creating and energising a psychologically safe culture that was motivational, and this was very important as an enabler. So let's look at a model that you can use when it comes to analysing cultural change. Kurt Lewin created this model called force field diagram stroke analysis back in 1951. And this is a really good model. So basically what you do is you maybe run a workshop, bring a group of managers together, maybe have some flip charts and draw a line down the flip chart centre and then start a brainstorming session. What are the driving forces that can enable us within our culture and our organisation that can support the cultural change project? And then, in the other side, we list all the blockers that could get in the way of the cultural change project. And then what you do with that is you evaluate the depth of blockers and the depth and scale of the enablers. And then you have an idea of the balance between the two. And from that, you can create a strategy which can either dilute the effectiveness of potential blockers or can enhance the effectiveness of potential enablers. So that's an excellent model. That's a typical model that we would teach you on the MBA programme. So, what I'd like to do now is just leave you with an exercise. Why don't you think about the blockers and enablers that we discussed together in the last 5 minutes? And if you were leading a cultural change project with your team, what key skills do you think you would need? What key skills would a manager need to lead successful cultural change? So, in the last video, we're going to look at leadership and cultural change. And I'm really looking forward to catching up with you at that point. So in the meantime, thank you very much. Goodbye. Hello everybody, it's David Potter here again. Welcome to video 3, Leadership and Cultural Change. In this short video, what we're going to do together is we're going to review some basic leadership theories. And we're going to look at some of the work that was created by scholars that help us develop our cultural change leadership skills. So getting back to Ed Schein, as I said in the first video, he is a seminal thinker in the subject of cultural change projects. And Schein states that it can be argued that the only thing of importance that leaders do is to create and manage culture. And that the unique talent of leaders is their ability to understand and work with culture. And that it is the ultimate act of leadership to understand and work with culture when it is viewed as dysfunctional. Now that statement has a lot of ideas layered into it. However, at its epicenter, the essence of what Schein is proposing is that management is involved in managing the day-to-day activities within the framework of the organisational culture, whilst leadership is about creating that culture in the first place and managing it specifically with a view to changing it as the world starts to change around the leaders who are running the organisation and the underlying beliefs and values and assumptions that perhaps have worked for the organisation in the past and are maybe not so effective and need to be changed going forward. So fundamental to what Schein is saying is that leadership and cultural change are closely interconnected. And he is implying that you cannot change organisational culture without effective leadership. If one wishes to distinguish leadership from management or administration, one can argue that leadership creates and changes culture, while management and administration act within culture. So again, repeating the point, managers manage within the framework of the organisational culture, whilst leaders create it and change it. Now, obviously, you need effective management and effective leadership, coming together in partnership as distinctive sets of competencies if you're going to successfully manage a cultural change. So the central question that should drive your thinking when it comes to managing and leading cultural change is what kind of leadership style should you adopt as an organisation if you want to be successful? Should you adopt transactional leadership, which basically means I pay you a wage, I give you a bonus perhaps, I may give you a company car, and I may give you a nice office. You could also possibly work from home. And then, in return for all of that, you would follow my leadership. And this is what we would call transactional leadership. Or alternatively, do you overlay onto transactional leadership transformational leadership qualities? So do I present myself to you in a way that inspires you to go beyond normal expectations? Or do I adopt a coaching leadership style? Should my leadership style be one where I'm really interested in your personal growth, your personal development, rather than just be there simply to check on what you're doing, which involves transactional leadership? Or is it participative leadership? Do I share with you the decision-making process? Do we collaborate together? Are we really a team? Or is it that the combination of all of the above is what's required? And I happen to believe it's a combination of all of the above, which means that we need a leadership model that encapsulates all of these qualities. Are your leaders role models? Do they inspire people through their backstory? Do they touch people intellectually and make them think? And do you provide individualized consideration, perhaps through a coaching leadership style? And do they care about people? And if you can tap into these higher level motivational resources, and if you enjoy really good rapport with your team and create a state of psychological safety and build reflexivity into your thinking as a leader, and you can enhance your emotional intelligence, then you're on your way to developing a really effective leadership culture. So, here's a little exercise for you. Why don't you review the 4 elements below? Rapport, emotional intelligence, reflexivity, and psychological safety. And why don't you rate each one of them in order of their importance to the success of a cultural change intervention and justify your rationale. Okay, so thank you very much for now, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future. Thank you now. Goodbye.
I hope you've been learning a lot on this brief overview of MBA materials. In this final week, Dr. Alina Kostic and Professor John Finch will discuss some of the essentials of digital marketing and business-to-business marketing, or B2B. In the digital marketing module, Dr. Alina Kostic will introduce you to the process of creating and refining a successful digital marketing strategy. This will involve a digital audit and understanding your consumers' digital journey, and then you'll explore a few tactics from a digital marketeer's toolbox. You'll also learn about budgeting and performance measurement in digital marketing with a guest appearance by an industry speaker. In the B2B module, Professor John Finch will introduce you to business-to-business marketing, including the importance of social and economic relationships, technical interactions, and networks. You will apply these key concepts in a case study, highlighting how many business-to-business companies operate and also practice marketing in business markets both up and downstream.
My name is Dr. Alina Kostic, and I'm a senior lecturer in marketing at the University of Glasgow. I will guide you through this mini unit that focuses on digital marketing in business-to-consumer context. In our mini unit, we will talk about digital marketing strategy and tactics. Now, to be good at digital marketing, you need to first understand overall marketing strategy. You had the chance to reflect on successful marketing strategy in our first discussion prompt. Whether you answered that successful marketing strategies select and target the right consumers, or that successful marketing strategies are built on correct positioning for these consumer segments, or that successful strategies are heavily data-driven, all of these insights translate into digital marketing. Let us consider the SO-Stack framework that clearly illustrates how successful digital marketing strategies are developed and maintained. It starts with a situation analysis, which reviews your current position and includes a digital audit, as well as consumer insight, competition and industry benchmarking. In other words, it tells you where you are right now. The next step allows you to decide where you want to be as you set your new objectives. Next comes the strategy. Think of it as an answer to the question, how do we get to these objectives? What is our overall big picture plan? It would be wise to carefully plan your segmentation, targeting, and positioning at this stage. After the strategy come tactics. Here, you would dive into the specifics and select suitable digital marketing tools that can help you enact your chosen strategy and reach your overall objectives. For example, if my strategy is to generate awareness in a specific consumer segment, I might select search engine marketing and social media advertising as my tactics. We will take a closer look at the variety of digital marketing tools later in this mini unit. Many digital marketers skip straight to the tactics. They want to dive right into selecting the specific digital tool using the latest technical solutions. But without anchoring your tactics in a situation analysis, objectives, and strategy, you risk reacting rather than acting. In fact, you can write your own story if you follow the SO-Stack process thoughtfully and deliberately. Next step of the framework is the action plan. That involves determining specifically who does what and when. Budgets and schedules will be your friend here. And the last step is control, which is very important. It lets you know how you are performing and sheds light on the success of your digital marketing strategy through digital analytics and consumer insights. It also feeds into the next situation analysis. You see, the process is circular. It never ends. You're continuously tweaking and adapting your strategy based on the data and objectives. On one hand, digital marketing and technology are transforming consumer behavior. On the other hand, tendencies in consumer behavior are informing and changing digital marketing. So these two things are really intertwined and feed into each other. In traditional marketing, brands often talk to consumers, but in many ways it's a one-sided conversation. In digital marketing, we tap into intricate people's networks using digital channels. This is a conversation of many. Consumers are given a voice and can share their opinion and experiences with others. For example, by leaving an online review or sharing a meme about the brand through so-called dark social media, that is, digital channels that are typically hidden from us marketers, like WhatsApp. This means that understanding your digital consumer is more important than ever for the success of your digital marketing strategy. Now, digital consumers are not a homogeneous group. Your digital marketing strategy must start with different types of consumers and different markets that you are targeting. Segmentation involves grouping customers to deliver more relevant communications and offers for them. Marketing places emphasis on finding differences between consumers, segmenting and then targeting with differentiated approach. Same principles apply online, but the basis for differentiation might be different in the online environment. Segments could be finer. For example, it's possible to have a segment of one person, and there is more data to enable fine-tuning of strategies. In fact, precise targeting can be a good thing. In digital environments, it allows for higher inclusivity. As an example, in 2020, PepsiCo Brazil partnered with a local startup to launch Maya, a virtual assistant that translates material on PepsiCo website to sign language. So, how do you segment consumers? They can be segmented based on their demographics, that is, factual characteristics such as age, highest education level, and more. Psychographics, values, lifestyle, hobbies, interests. In other words, what makes your consumers tick? What drives them? Behavioral segmentation can be done based on consumer behaviors in different digital channels. For example, did they open your weekly news email? Did they browse your online store? And finally, webographics involve criteria related to the web, such as internet usage, social media usage, devices and systems used, time of day and the duration of time online, and so on. We can narrow our targets into personas, representations of archetypical users. They bring people to life in the minds of the marketers who use them. To create such personas, the first step is to collect and analyze the data about the target consumer groups, and from the data you then extract and start to identify patterns of behavior to describe different types of target consumers. A digital customer experience encompasses a brand's total digital experience. It includes brand's presence on different platforms, such as its website, mobile site, and apps, ads on gaming platforms, you name it. The quality of this experience is based on the combination of rational and emotional factors that influence customers' perceptions of the brand online. Digital customer experience is the aspect of your consumer experience journey that extends to all digitally connected environments. Today, we talk about the omni-digital touchpoints, from a chatbot to social media, from a smart speaker to virtual reality, the full spectrum of different digital touchpoints across the digital space, or as I call them, a digital marketer's toolbox. Understanding all digital touchpoints and how they affect consumer journey is critical. Some of you might be familiar with the concept of consumer journey in the digital era. The journey starts with consumers considering which options they have to satisfy a specific need or want. For example, if I'm looking for a new smartphone, I might consider iPhone, Samsung, Google Pixel, and more. Next comes the evaluation stage, where the alternatives are compared based on the criteria important to each individual consumer target. For example, I might be particularly interested in the quality of the front-facing smartphone camera for all those selfies, you know. So, a consumer would evaluate the alternatives and then pull the plug, so to speak. The digital marketer would achieve a conversion, whether it's a purchase, a subscription, a donation, a vote, any other goal that you might have in your digital marketing. Now, as marketers, we hope that post-purchase, the consumer will enter a so-called loyalty loop. That means that they would first, hopefully, enjoy our product, then advocate for our product or brand by spreading positive word of mouth, and then bond with the brand and hopefully come back for more. And this is how one ends up owning every single Google Pixel smartphone 1 through 7. Now, consider various digital touchpoints throughout this journey. Display ads, search engine marketing, influencer marketing, voice marketing. At which stage of the journey would each of those tactics be most impactful? Which ones can aid, for example, in the post-purchase enjoyment? Which ones can reinforce the bond with the brand? Which ones can create higher awareness at the consideration stage? Let's take a quick look at the variety of digital tools available.
Hi, my name's David Syme. I've been in digital marketing and communications for about 23 years now. I've worked with the likes of Google, the Modern Apprenticeship Scheme and the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the application of digital media to marketing processes and other kind of industrial processes. Over this time, I've been using analytics really, really heavily, and I really, really do like the systems that are out there, from Google Analytics through to the various different ones that you'll find in social media channels. However, the main lesson that I've learned over all this time is not to get too buried in the digital information, okay? Everything that you look up is only important if it has a real world application, if it has a real world meaning. Now, what do I mean by this? Okay. A lot of the analytic systems will tell you things like visitor numbers or page views, or even numbers of likes or that kind of thing on social media posts. And that's interesting, but in the most cases, I tend to call that vanity metrics, because having a lot of likes on a post or having a lot of visits to a page doesn't necessarily mean anything. In fact, it can actually have a negative meaning if it's not converting into something real world, tangible and beneficial. Now, when you use analytics, most of the time you're going to be using it either to monitor the success of one of your own campaigns or some online activity that you've done, or even an offline activity that you've done. But usually out in the workplace, you're doing it for a client who's paid that money for that post or given you that time to put that post out or create that content, or you're doing it for an employer, or you're doing it for your own business. Now, in all of those cases, you're going to have a reason why you put that content out there. Either you wanted that website or that post to have a reach to gain more eyes or more awareness of your campaign, your brand, your product or service, or you're going to want to have a very specific fiscal financial outcome, like I want to sell more stuff or I want to make more money selling the stuff that I'm making. These are real world tangible outcomes. Even councils and municipal organisations will have reasons for putting out their posts which aren't as easily discernible. Like, for instance, I've worked with a lot of councils in Scotland, and they want to get information out on things like bin collections, or when a firework display is going to happen, or imminent road closures, and they want to make sure that people have seen that, responded to it maybe, given their feedback, or are aware. So it's awareness campaigns with it. You see, these are real world tangible outcomes, and you can't measure them simply by going, this many people saw this post, or this got liked by this many people. It doesn't convert. So the lesson is, when you go into analytics, go in with a very specific set of requirements that you have from the analytics system. What do I want to know, or what does my client want to know? How does this benefit my client? And then what information do I need to answer these questions? So if I want to know on an awareness campaign how successful a television advert or a social media advert has been, then I'm going to be looking at, and you'll be seeing this in the rest of your course, yes, the number of visits, but where did they come from? Yeah, the actual metrics around that. So where geographically did the visits come from? What kind of devices were used to view that content? Was it a mobile phone? Was it a desktop or a laptop machine? These behave differently, and people behave differently on them. So it's important to know that the mobile phones are good for short form content. They're good for limited interaction, whereas desktop and laptop machines are good for long form content that you take longer to read, more text, and you can have more interaction because you've got a keyboard on there and a mouse, so it's easier to respond, right? So that's a certain amount of information. You can also find out what kind of device they used. You can actually establish aspects of people's demographics, their kind of background and type and wealth levels and so forth from the kind of devices that they use, whether they're high-spec devices, Apple or Android, or this kind of thing. It can give you a lot of information which already exists out there. So that's one. Now you're going to want to know when that information was observed as well. Putting out a post in the morning or putting out content in the morning that gets lots of eyes on it is fine. But if you find that it's like first thing in the morning, people don't really have time to respond to content then. They'll maybe click like or, that kind of thing. But usually then they have to get up, get dressed, have breakfast, get the kids ready for school, get themselves ready for work, go off, do work, then come home, by which point they've forgotten about the content. So first thing in the morning is good for your vanity metrics, is good for your likes and your views, but it's not necessarily good for actually getting actions, right? So this is the kind of information that you pick up over time. So you need to then be able to go, well, what did they do next? How did they behave in the site? What was the quality of that visit? Now that you can pick up by things like time on page or time on site, just a few seconds, and they're looking at it, they're bouncing off. Bouncing means that they're not really taking full attention and they're not really taking information away with them. If they're spending a bit longer on the page, that's great. If they're spending 15 hours on the page, the chances are they've opened it, forgotten to close it, and gone elsewhere. So that doesn't mean anything. So you need to be able to separate those metrics from it. You can set parameters so it's within a certain level. Also, how many pages did they view? And were they the pages that you wanted them to view? If they landed on a landing page that you've set up for an advertising campaign, did you want them to then go and buy something? So did they then go to the product page? Did they then go to the click to buy now? Did they then get to the thank you for your purchase page? You can monitor all that, and that can be your goal or your success metric. You can even work out exactly how much they spent if it's an e-commerce site, how many purchases, how many things they put in their basket. It's hard to get people to the site, but once you've got them there, it's a lot easier to get them to buy more things. Now one person buying two things is worth exactly the same to a client as two people arriving on separately and each buying one thing. But it's a lot easier to get one person to buy two things than it is to get two people on your site. So these are, but the old adage is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. These are important things to bear in mind, because these are things that you can go, okay, people that came from this location using this device at this time tended to buy more things. So therefore, I am going to target my advertising to those people at those times at those locations rather than other people. So you get more value. However, that's just e-commerce. What if what you're trying to do is get people to sign up for a big ticket purchase or a big ticket item? Well, that's going to be probably a lead capture or lead generation form. That's where they get the opportunity to put more information in. Like, for instance, they're getting insurance for their car. You need a lot of information from them. Or they're interested in buying a house. Again, you're not just going to click to buy now on a house. You're going to need info, right? You're going to need to put your salespeople back in touch with them. So That's lead generation forms, and therefore that's the page you want them to go to. And you want to then monitor whether they've completed that form. And then you want to monitor afterwards. This is systems integration by using broader analytic systems like CRMs, client relationship management systems, which you can integrate with Google Analytics, what they did once they left the site. Okay, so they filled in that form, yep. They are then on the record of the CRM. The sales agent phoned them, went through the information, and then they did or did not make a purchase off the back of that. That's all in the CRM. Now that's interesting as well, because that means that you can monitor their entire customer journey right from the they came from Tanzania at 7 in the morning, 7 in the morning our time, but afternoon their time, and they engaged with it. They were using a desktop machine. They filled out a form. They got in touch with or rather our salesperson got in touch with them using that form. They signed up, they bought it, they spent this much money, and they're now in our records, and we can set them up for a renewal or an upsell or a cross-sell in a year's time. Tangible, useful information. Okay. So this is what I want you to be thinking of right from the outset when you use analytics right to the end. It's not exactly what the information is, it's why. How long did they spend on the site? Where did they come from? How many pages did they engage with? What did they do next? All this behavioral stuff. If you can keep an eye on the bigger picture and keep in mind what the purpose of getting people to your site or your social media channel is, then you're going to get far better results with your analytics. And ironically, you're going to spend a lot less time staring at them and drowning in data, because you'll only be looking at the stuff which is relevant to you. Trust me, if you go in with a very specific agenda in mind, you'll just end up burying yourself in information, and so much information that you can't even remember the useful stuff from the unuseful stuff. So always have a clear path and use what you know about the analytics to get that.
I'm John Finch. I'm a Professor of Marketing at the University of Glasgow's Adam Smith Business School. I specialise in teaching and researching business-to-business marketing. I've undertaken research in industrial chemistry, the water industry, and currently in financial services and fintech. A marketing manager plays a critical role in business-to-business companies, as indeed do their counterparts as purchasing managers among buyers in making and undertaking business exchanges. Business-to-business marketing brings to the surface continual tensions between specific, embedded and idiosyncratic practices in the details of making exchanges of business goods and services, and attempts to establish general models as guides to ways of doing and evaluating business and marketing. The specifics can be quite broad in business-to-business activities, including marketing, coordinating sales activities, working across what can be multiple points of contact in sales and after sales, and drawing together market and marketing knowledge into the development and adaptation of a product or a service. There are two further dimensions to the challenges in business-to-business marketing. First, business-to-business marketers play or should play critical integrating roles internally within their own organisations. I've highlighted the potential of business-to-business exchanges needing to have multiple points of contact through making initial prospects, sales lead-ins, actual exchanges and post-sales user experience and service. Integration internally helps consistency of communications, both internally and externally, and should be designed to draw in multiple sources of information, with these likely to be in very different formats, for example, combining qualitative and quantitative data. Second, and focusing more on the external-facing activities which are perhaps more often associated with marketing. Business-to-business marketers need to be adept at blending in with, making sense of, and establishing credibility in different settings, mostly domains of expertise for the established and potential customers and clients. A critical feature in business-to-business marketing is the coming together of different kinds of technical knowledge and expertise. Most obviously, this is between the product or service development of a seller company and integration and use of a product or service of a purchasing company. Marketing itself is a further area of specialist knowledge, with marketing managers not necessarily also having qualifications in underlying technology, for example, chemistry, pharmacology, finance, or computing science. The critical point here, internally and externally, is to know enough. A business-to-business marketer being skilled in translation, combination and coordination of many areas of specialist technical knowledge. These challenges manifest themselves in the practical experience of business-to-business markets in practice. At a recent business-to-business workshop for the Market Research Society, the following areas were identified among participants as the big challenges they faced in practice. First, the blurring of personal and business, especially in the uses of devices, attitudes and data. Second, reaching and understanding small and medium-sized enterprises, both as suppliers and as buyers. Third, understanding reconfigurations of what counts in terms of the field, the market or the industry. Fourth, producing insights for external or internal clients through adopting and implementing specific research methods and activities. Fifth, making and sustaining business-to-business brands. And sixth, adapting to changing approaches to regulation. Taken together, these challenges, which are mainly from the perspective of larger organisations, including the service sector, indicate some helpful trends. The personal role and reputation of a business-to-business marketer can be important. They often have professional identities across overlapping settings, including professional marketing roles, as well as in industry groups. And their communications in these overlapping roles with others can easily extend into social media, often LinkedIn. SMEs can be hard to reach, either as buyers or suppliers, as such organisations do not always have distinct professional roles as in business to business. Fields are changing radically. One example is with electric vehicles, where many different components and software are involved, as well as charging networks. Similarly, fintech is changing financial services in business to business as elsewhere. Insights is critical into business to business. Marketers are often designing communications and other data, producing and gathering practices. These are novel to internal or external clients. For example, using minor variations in the design of any practice to test differences, alpha-beta testing, is common in consumer marketing and used more in business to business. The intention is to demonstrate to senior managers that insights can be made and inform action, that marketing works. The next question that marketers face is often research design and method of justifying the reliability of their findings and recommendations. Analysis means deep diving into a problem, categorizing the themes and components of that problem, breaking the problem up, even if temporarily and artificially, into parts and investigating those parts. Then reassembling the problem into a more settled state, allowing findings and recommendations. In the previous video and reading, I mentioned that business-to-business marketing is typically caught between the necessity of context-specific and idiosyncratic practices in the heat of the exchanges and attempts to work in more general terms. Analysis will then require combinations of different kinds of data, information, know-how and expertise. I introduced three concepts in the previous reading: relationships, interactions, and networks. There are many other ideas and concepts that one can draw upon in analysing business-to-business problems and cases. These three provide a starting point and also illustrate my point about using themes and ideas to break open a problem, categorise parts, and point a way to put things back together for the purposes of findings and recommendations. The point about relationships is that they are reciprocal and resistant to ending or closure. The initial focus of a relationship is dyadic, though this can quickly open up others, weaker or stronger, supporting or possibly excluded in one particular episode of exchange. I mentioned in the first reading that a typical focus on business to business is lead generation. At the same time, coming into a business-to-business role shows that relationships are resilient, can be handed on, can reappear in new forms, perhaps as people change roles, companies and jobs. If I stop buying from you, it may not end a relationship. You might think of ways to try and win the business back, and perhaps have obligations in serving existing products or services for a time. So a relationship can persist and be resilient, most obviously if there is current business-to-business exchange of a product or service. And a relationship can exist if there is no current product or service being bought or sold, though possibly obligations from past work, or a prospect or an expectation of a fresh selling opportunity. The analytical question is, what is being exchanged? If a product or service is being offered and bought, the product or service moves one way, and under some contracted payment conditions, payment comes back. All this takes time. The time allows for other exchanges, such as information about user experience, information about supplier capability. Relationship can shapeshift. possibly into an important means of supporting and facilitating an exchange, and further into an asset or a resource that either party can attempt to influence and negotiate into new projects and plans. Interaction looks a bit like relationship. Analysis offers the potential to look at the same data, case or problem, and then tell a different, possibly overlapping story, picking out different details and bringing these into focus. Relationship is a form of organising, often transcending corporate boundaries, and can be open quickly to reflection, as in this is a valuable, productive or trustworthy relationship. By contrast, interaction is felt, though often subconsciously, slowly, in different areas of a selling or buying organisation. In a technical sense, mostly within capabilities and technologies of a buyer and of users of a product or service. Interaction can be restless, dynamic, and a source often incrementally of adaptation and adjustment in capabilities. Customers bring idiosyncratic challenges. Producers in any one period will typically work with a subset of the market and may work with end users across different markets. Business-to-business markets are often relatively thin and with high-value exchanges, meaning that there can be an intense focus on working between producer and customer on particular challenges, perhaps driven by different final product markets, i.e. the customer's customers. Networks are a broad way of thinking and visualizing, of starting from a question and exchange and working outwards, mapping those involved, their roles, their contributions, exchanges, engagements, expertise and potential. Mind mapping software can be helpful with this initial sketching work. Many business-to-business markets have small numbers of players, producers, buyers, sellers, end users, consultants, regulators and so on. Strategically, business-to-business marketers are often attempting to position their selling and buying activities in a network, and at the same time trying to reshape the network to their advantage. For example, while cutting players out of network is difficult because relationships are often resilient, changing patterns of connection or strength of connection are critical activities. In other words, strategically, business-to-business marketing is networking in the sense of mapping, drawing boundaries around, shaping and reshaping a network. The case study features food waste, anaerobic digestion, biogas and fertiliser. It is quite some combination. There are also different phases and boundaries around which business-to-business relationships and interactions form. In a novel twist compared with consumer marketing, here consumers, at least households, become business-to-business suppliers of food waste. And of course it is notable that the food waste is food which is bought and not consumed. The next boundary and set of exchanges are between the local authority, which in this case collects household waste, and the recycling facility owner, here Scottish Water Horizons, the commercial subsidiary of Scottish Water. The final boundary to mention in this case is between Scottish Water Horizons and the owners of the electricity distribution system, the national power grid. The first relationship is not directly commercial. Households pay council tax. There is no clear connection between this and waste collection. For instance, the council tax does not vary with the extent of waste collection services that a household uses. The other two boundaries are commercial and fairly transactional. Scottish Water Horizons charges a gate fee to the local authority customer, though the customer is at the same time a supplier. And there are alternatives to the local authority, such as paying to use landfill and paying a landfill tax in connection with this. Scottish Water Horizons sells its green energy into the national grid in relation to wholesale electricity prices from other sources such as wind, solar and hydro. As indicated, these are typical business-to-business markets in that the main players are small in number, the contracts can be quite large, and the exchanges have at least a double focus, and there are different technologies interacting in these phases and boundaries. Across the phases and boundaries in this case, the relationships are not especially strong or decisive. They are at least visible, as both the Council and Scottish Water Horizons have strong interests in drawing in households to the overall recycling system. Yet households need to be persuaded to join in and undertake work. They must sort food waste from other waste, store it in a caddy for up to 1 week, and place this by a collection early in the morning on the once-a-week collection day. The relationship is as much with the concept of green energy and recycling, with the Council and Scottish Water Horizons facilitating these relationships. Relationships elsewhere are heavily mediated both by price and by the regulation, audit and accountability of transactions and contracts between, in this case, a local authority and the commercial subsidiary of a water company. The public interest is prominent owing to the prominence of public sector organisations and regulated organisations. Similarly, the relationship between Scottish Water and the owner of National Electricity Grid is similarly thin in relationships and strong in transaction. This case features relationships specifically involving the boundary with households. Interaction is much more prevalent at all the boundaries and working into the producing and exchanging activities, techniques and technologies that are connected together into this recycling energy system. And the interactions require investments, so need some trust by all parties to encourage and support the necessary and long-lived infrastructure investment. So the business-to-business marketers and associated professional and marketing consultants involved in the case all play a vital role in producing and exchanging goods and services for sure, and also in forming cases for investment in the physical infrastructure and in capabilities and skills for those participating across the recycling system. Scottish Water Horizons made a choice as to whether the biogas could be cleaned and processed as a gas supply or to be processed as electricity to be fed into the national electricity grid. Both options require investment, decisions in entering and supply contracts. Local authorities need to commit to equipping households with recycling infrastructure, including food waste along with other dry recycling with bins and collection routines. This is especially sensitive for food waste, where reliable, predictable and regular collections are needed to encourage households to participate. The incentive is especially in diverting waste from landfill and so avoiding landfill charges. Households need to commit to sorting their food waste. Alongside the relationship dimension, the interaction dimension is vital as they need to adopt habits and positive motivations. Food waste is already deteriorating. In warm weather, households might need to freeze their waste and sort for collection. Waste also brings with it nudges to evaluate purchasing behaviours. The case has some unusual qualities, notably of households being engaged suppliers into a business-to-business system, and there being overlays of strong values to the idea of recycling and of biofuel, as well as some strong commercial contracting at other boundaries, which are subject to strict contracting and tendering processes, so reducing greatly, they're not removing entirely, the scope for relationship work. Also, the interaction element is strong and visible across all boundaries, manifest both as practices in exchange and also from the business-to-business marketers involved in informing investment decisions across a devolved specialist and also highly coordinated infrastructure. One area that I introduced earlier in this module was networks. I've kept the focus so far on relationships and interactions, as these are more obviously prominent in the case, and something that the business-to-business marketers and others contributing to marketing are much more obviously involved in. The networks are stable in this case. There are a small number of anaerobic digestion plants where local authorities and others involved in food waste and other compostable waste can go. The technology itself is stable and long-standing, used to process wastewater, which is the background to Scottish Water Horizons interests, and in farms, where systems can be micro and self-contained. Household waste collections are aggregated in a stable way among a small number of local authorities. In the commercial sector, which I've not covered so far, there are private companies offering services that are broadly similar to the local authorities' work with households, except these are paid for as standalone services. The stability allows for accurate assessments of how much food waste exists and assessments to be made as to the costs of recovering and collecting this. The variable elements are also driven by price fluctuations, especially the overall price of electricity. Feasibly, the network could change as others invest in anaerobic digestion plants, though any such investment decision would be based on a stable understanding of available food waste. The additional point to emphasise is that the network is brought to life through the relationships and interactions between the main players. Given stability, the rules of the game, especially in contracting and tendering, have a strong impact on shaping the kinds of relationships that are permitted. and the network is given stability and longevity by national policies as to the cost of and taxes for the alternative for recycling, which is often landfill. The main lesson overall is one of incremental investment in capturing higher proportions of food waste from households and in ensuring the smooth, predictable and reliable flow of the system from food waste across meals in households to weekly collections to the anaerobic processing cycle and the generation of a flow of electricity. In the first video, I introduced 6 main challenges for business-to-business marketers. I want to revisit these to further demonstrate the array of skills and capabilities needed in business-to-business marketing. As a reminder, first, the blurring of personal and business, especially in the case of devices, attitudes, and data. Second, reaching and understanding small and medium-sized enterprises, both as suppliers and as buyers. Third, understanding reconfigurations of what counts in terms of the field, market, or industry. Fourth, producing insight for external or internal clients through adopting and implementing specific research methods and activities. Fifth, making and sustaining business-to-business brands. And sixth, adapting to changing approaches to regulation. The first point has some relevance, with Scottish Water Horizons featuring the anaerobic plant in some of its social media, and those involved in the facility's operation being prominent in industry groups and in some publicity work, especially in explaining the processes to households. The second point again focuses on households. In this case, the households are equivalent to small, indeed micro enterprises, as the suppliers of food waste. And, as already pointed out, the relationships are not brought to life by commercial exchanges and contracts. Rather, in order to participate in the recycling system, households are expected to volunteer sorting, storing and scheduling work in order to coordinate their actions with other much larger organisations in the overall system. The field is relatively stable, as with the third point. Rather, the cases show organisations with different technologies have to coordinate their actions and put in place smooth exchanges at the boundaries. What counts in the field, the overall recycling system, also features government policy to landfill and overall electricity prices. Fourth, insights are critical in this case, and the activity generates significant, reliable and quantitative data. Insights in analysing the data are especially important for the investments required in installing and operating the anaerobic digestion plant and in the processing activity to produce electricity. Others make investments too. Business-to-business marketers play a critical role in informing the investment in infrastructure, as well as ensuring the smooth flow of exchanges across the main boundaries in the recycling system. Fifth, branding is important. Scottish Water Horizons have taken an established technology in the wastewater sector and placed it into a different recycling system. Local authorities can associate their activities with a positive outcome for some waste management. Sixth, regulation is absolutely vital in sustaining the recycling system. In terms of landfill policy and taxes that make space for the recycling market, and as technical specifications in producing biogas and then electricity in electricity supply.